Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. This is your man, Dr. John C. Turner, aka the Professor JT, and we're live here with the Doc Chat. I'm telling you, this is Black Women's History Month, and I've got some Black women heavy hitters here. I'm telling you right now, the trifecta of doctors with healthcare careers, and they're gonna come to you with some good tips, some good knowledge, and some good words about who they are, what they do, and they're gonna drop the mics today. I'm telling you. Dr. Juanita Tooks, Dr. Samara Washington, and Dr. Tiffany Montgomery. They are here on the Doc Chat today. We're going to start with Dr. Tiffany Montgomery. Introduce yourself. Tell us what your major was. Tell us where you got your doctorate degree at, and a little bit of what you do now. Go right ahead. You're on the Doc Chat.
Sure. So I am Dr. Tiffany Montgomery. I am a nurse by training. I got a PhD in nursing from UCLA School of Nursing in 2016. So it's been almost 7 years. When I first finished my PhD, I did a postdoc right away. Did a postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania in the School of Medicine, which was really cool because I got to experience what it was like to do research and scholarship with physicians. I was actually in the first cohort of nurses to ever graduate from the University of Pennsylvania School of Medicine with a Master of Science in Health Policy Research. So that was pretty nice. I worked for a year afterward at a private university and then decided to do a second postdoc and did that a more traditional way in a school of nursing with my nursing mentor, Dr. Loretta Sweet-Jamat. Finished that up and taught for another year before coming back to the clinical side and the hospital. So now I am in North Texas. I work for a hospital system where I do a lot of quality work, data management, data analysis around maternal health. So I do a lot of things with our maternal health outcomes.
That's incredible, incredible. Dr. Juanita Tooks, you are on the Doc Chat. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Juanita Tooks, and I got my PhD from Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan. I am still based in Michigan. I got my doctorate in clinical mental health counseling with a special emphasis on higher education. And I got that June 8th, 2021. So after I graduated with my doctorate, I was trying to figure out what to do because when I entered into my program in 2016, I thought for sure that I was going to be a full-time faculty professor. But in the midst of my program, I noticed a gap between doctoral students and academic advising and support. So I pivoted from what I thought I was going to do to where I felt like I can contribute and close that gap. So what I did was I was doing community mental health for a number of years as a therapist, working in home, in the community, in clinic. And so I shifted and went through the whole job application process, which was pretty tough because of the pandemic, there was a lot of entities that just were not hiring, and I was trying to get into the higher education sector from mental health. I had been a therapist for a number of years, and I was trying to shift and apply my clinical skill set in higher education, which was difficult at the time where I was searching and applying for positions. But then in January of 2022, I got hired with Michigan State University's College of Osteopathic Medicine, where I am a medical education learning specialist and an academic advisor for our future osteopathic physicians there. And I'm also a private practice clinician. I've been in private practice for about 4 years. And so I do that. So I'm still in the clinical aspect as far as mental health, but I have shifted majority of my attention to assisting doctors. That's where I feel as though my calling is right now. And that comes from the fact that I wish I had more support as I was going through my doctoral program from my advisor. And I didn't quite have that. So that's where the pivot came in. I said, I don't ever want another doctor, no matter what you're getting your doctorate in, I don't ever want another doctor to feel as though they are going at this alone. As a student, as you all know, there's so many things that you have to keep in mind and remember, deadlines and applications, and you're trying to finish your dissertation and other things. And so as an academic advisor, I get to help students figure things out so that they can put most of their attention, nearly all of their attention, on their studies, and all of the logistics, they can come to me and we can figure the rest out.
That's incredible. Incredible. Dr. Samaria Washington, you're on the Doc Chat. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, I'm Dr. Samaria Washington. I am a respiratory therapist by trade, and I got my DHA at the Virginia University of Lynchburg back in 2021. I took a very long journey to get my doctorate. I started out many years ago trying to get a PhD in healthcare. And I had a number of challenges in trying to make that happen. Doing the dissertation and the gap between, administration and the students, it was crazy. So I made a couple of changes. I had some personal things to come about, and ultimately I settled on the DHA program, which I'm very happy with. I have done a number of things. I've been a respiratory therapist. I have done marketing, admissions director, and my greatest love has been nursing home administration, which I've done for a number of years. My current company actually was a previous company that helped me while I was on my doctoral journey, Bridgepoint Healthcare, based out of Virginia with facilities in Washington, D.C. I literally landed on a regional director of operations role just like weeks after walking across the stage getting my DHA. So I'm currently in that role. I work primarily with seniors, individuals that have had a long road to, that's kind of where I am.
That's incredible. Incredible. Now, if you are here watching the doc, let us know where you're at. Let us know where you're from. If you're in a doctorate program, let us know what doctorate program you're in. And if you are a doctor, tell us, hey, where did you get your doctorate? Now, this is an important show because these are healthcare administrators. Now, sometimes they don't highlight enough doctors that have that healthcare emphasis. So we're going to start with Dr. Tiffany Montgomery. Tell us what made you say, I want to go get my doctorate degree, and what were the steps you took to initially get into your program?
Sure. So I had been a nurse already, maybe 4 or 5 years before I even thought about getting a doctorate. I knew when I left nursing school that I wanted to be an educator. And so after 2 years of working in labor and delivery, I went back to school to get a master's of science in nursing, and I went into a nursing education program. Loved that program. And at the end of the program, I started to get really interested in research. And so I just thought, while doing a couple of projects and looking at things, it would be really interesting to learn how to do research and be able to disseminate this information for myself, because I knew some of the things I was reading weren't being interpreted properly. I do work with or on the young adult Black women population. And I just knew some of the things that were coming out, they didn't make sense. I had the lived experience. And so I thought, I need training on this. And so at the time, the DNP was still kind of a fairly new doctorate, the doctorate of nursing practice. And so I had to decide, first of all, if I wanted a PhD, if I wanted to focus on research, or I wanted to focus on practice. And I decided to go the research route. And so I began looking for programs that emphasized nursing education. At the time, there were 3 of these programs in the country. And it meant I would have either had to move or do an online program. I had done my master's degree online. There was a brick and mortar school, it was only like 20 minutes from my house, but the degree program was online. And I knew I didn't want that for a doctorate. I needed to be in the classroom with my professors, having discussions and things like that. I actually went to a nursing conference in Hawaii, and just by happenstance, there was the former director of recruitment from UCLA. She was at this conference. We were the only 2 Black people I saw for a really long time. So I went up to her booth and I was like, hey, how you doing? Introduced myself. And she said, oh, you should hear about our doctorate program. And I thought, I'm not really interested in going to UCLA. I don't, it's not my style. I don't think I'll fit in there. And she said, you should just hear from some of our students. So she invited me for like a few months to the Pan-African Nursing Students and Alumni Association meetings. And I was like, I'm not doing that. And finally I thought, let me go, because this woman just keeps blowing up my email. I went to a meeting and I walked out of there saying, I'm applying to UCLA. I'm not applying to any other schools. And if I don't get in, I will keep applying until I do. I walked in there and at the time, we had a Black male dean, Dr. Courtney Leiter. He was the first Black male dean of a school of nursing in the country. And he was at the meeting along with several other alumni and professors. And this man was sitting on the floor, crisscross applesauce, eating a bucket of El Pollo Loco chicken. And I said, if that man is not my dean, I don't want one.
Wow.
Like, I can be somewhere where I can be fully and authentically myself and be surrounded by a community of people who understand that and who support that. And so I went home and immediately got started on my application.
That's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Dr. Tooks, why go get a PhD? Like, why go do this?
Okay. So from a very early age, from about the age of 9 years old, God told me, because I believe in God. God is my everything. And he told me that I'd be a doctor at 9. I didn't know the different types of doctors or what that path was going to look like. But from a very early age, I knew that that's what I was going to do. So I was the child, and I know it's kind of like cheesy, but my mom had an old nurse uniform that she picked up from the Goodwill. I would have that on, all my dolls lined up in the basement, checking them in, registering them, telling them that they're going to feel better after they see the doctor, that whole thing. It actually happened. So I knew I wanted to be a doctor because at that age, there was, marital discord between my parents that I witnessed. And as a child, you're just so curious about things. And I'm like, why, are my parents yelling at each other? Like, why is no one talking about how they really feel? Like, why do people act like this? So I already knew that I wanted to study the human mind and human behavior to understand what I was seeing before my eyes. And so I went, and as I continued my journey, I remember in my 11th grade class, it was my intro to psychology course, Mr. Johnson, shouts out. I was like, I want to be a psychologist. After taking that class in high school, I knew I wanted to be a psychologist. And so there was an on-site admissions fair at my school as a senior, and I applied to Wayne State University, and a couple others, I think 2 other schools, and I got accepted by Wayne State University into their psychology program. So I proceeded to get my bachelor's in psychology. I went on and got my master's from Wayne State, which is in the Detroit area, in counseling psychology. And after that, I was pretty much burned out. So I didn't go straight through. Between each of my degrees, I took about 2 to 3 years off because your brain is just gone. So you need to let it grow back. So after my master's degree, I was fully in mental health, working in community mental health and working in behavioral clinics and things like that. And what caused me to go get a PhD, because I wasn't thinking about what God told me at 9 at that point. I'm like, I'm tired of school. But I didn't like my job. Community mental health is a tender area. There's not a lot of dollars. You don't get paid very much, but you are overloaded with caseloads and work. So I was working a lot with social workers. So I would have about 25 to 30 families that I was doing in-home therapy with. I was working with children on the autism spectrum, and those adults who had particular psychological diagnoses, working with them in their day programs, working with them at home. I was going to schools, seeing how kids were, behaving and things, any type of issues in school. So I was like a community worker, very similar to social work. So working in these interdisciplinary teams with school principals, parents, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, the whole 9 yards. And I remember my clinical supervisor at the time, because I needed to get supervised hours. He would come in so happy and carefree. And I'm like, I asked him one day in our supervision meeting, I said, what do you do? Like, what? You're just happy when you come to work. What do you do? And that's when he started telling me about, hey, maybe you should apply for a doctorate. And I was like, nope, I don't know about that. But he asked me a very important question. I said, you know what? Yeah, I want to go to get a doctorate. And he said, well, why? I didn't have an answer for that. So he told me, he said, how about you take some time to think about it? And when you come up with an answer, then we can discuss it. And that was a very valuable question, because I think sometimes, well, not sometimes, if you go into a doctorate program and you don't have a why, you're not going to make it.
That's
You're not going to
tweetable.
make it.
That'll tweet right there. Yeah.
So he was helping me develop a why. And so I applied for 4 PhD programs, and I believe it was like 2015, and I got rejected out of them all. That was very devastating. I applied to 1 school here, 3 schools out of state. I got rejected out of them all. I mean, it was devastating. Yeah. And I said, you know, maybe I'm just not smart enough to go get a doctorate, because obviously 4 schools, they don't want me. And so the following year, one of my staff came to me, and she knew how much I wanted to go get my PhD. And she said, how about you just try again?
Wow.
I started thinking, who wants that type of devastation all over again? But I prayed about it. God was like, go do this. I applied to 2 schools, and I'm like, well, you know, this cuts my chances from the year before, because I had more opportunities. But I got that first rejection letter. And then I'm like, all right, we got that one last one. It came in. I was accepted, proceeded with the interview. And before I even got home, I was told, before I even got any letter, that I was accepted into the counseling program at Oakland University. So that's where I started my journey. It took me 5 years, 3 years of coursework, and then 2 years of actually working on my dissertation. Woo, it was a long, challenging process, but I would not change a thing. I would still go back and get a PhD with all the blood, sweat, and many, many tears and moments of insanity. I would still go back and do it again, because it was definitely worth it.
Absolutely incredible. Dr. Washington, why go get a DHA? And what is a DHA for folks that may not know that?
So a DHA is a doctorate in healthcare administration. So it's actually a professional doctorate. So it doesn't necessarily require a dissertation per se. There are a number of programs that do require you to do a dissertation. And there are programs out there that don't require the dissertation. They may have like a practicum or a internship or something to that effect that you would need to do, which is what I ended up doing. Because I was so frustrated with the entire dissertation process with the school where I was at. I mean, after spending, I'm not kidding you, I hundreds of thousands of dollars on education. I was like, yeah, I can't even do this anymore. It's crazy. But, you know, my mother was a nursing assistant. So I grew up like in and around, you know, a healthcare setting. And her aunt, who lived in Miami. I was born and raised in Miami. And she used to say to me all the time, like, baby, you need to just be a nurse. I was like, okay. Wow. So I decided I wanted to go to nursing school. So after the collapse of my first marriage, I came back home to Miami and tried to get into a nursing school. It was around the time that Pan Am went under. So I think everybody and their mother, brother, cousin was trying to be a nurse. So there was like no getting into a nursing school. Like you could not pay your way in. So when I was in Germany for a period of time, a friend of mine worked, and I was always in the hospital hallway, and she was always in the hospital hallway. I was like, well, what you do? Because you ain't never working. She was like, girl, I'm a respiratory therapist. I was like, what's that? So she kind of explained it to me a little bit. I was like, okay. So when I was back home in Miami and I couldn't get into nursing school, I said, well, you know, let me check into this respiratory therapy thing. So respiratory schools were backed up. It's like, it was crazy. So I ended up going to a technical school initially. So I was able to get in, knock it out, get my certifications, and literally like start working. For some strange reason, I decided to go into the military. It's a great thing for some people. It wasn't necessarily the thing for me. But that's how I ended up in the Washington, D.C. area. And it was actually a great experience. But what I realized was that I wanted more. I had a part-time job somewhere, and I was actually overseeing respiratory therapy in several nursing homes. And again, the person who was the administrator of the nursing home, the person who was in charge of operations for the nursing home, I was like, man, she drives a nice car. She's fly every day. Like, she just go to meetings. Like, I could do that. So I asked, I was like, well, how do you do that? And so they told me about it. So I said, okay. So that's when I went back and got my bachelor's in healthcare administration. Tried to get in the administrator and training program. In order to become a nursing home administrator, you have to go into a nursing administrator and training program. It's called an AIT program. except in Michigan. You don't have to do one in Michigan. In Maryland, it's like a year-long program, and it's very difficult and very competitive to try to get in. So got my bachelor's, thought I was going to get in, no happenings. A mentor told me that I really should consider a master's. I was like, no problem. Went back, got my MBA. I was like, all right, I'm ready to get in the program. And he said to me, you know, you really should bloom where you're planted. Now, while I was very angry at the time that I was told that, I thought about it and it made sense. And from then on, you know, I really focused on doing the best job I could do in every job that I did. And so a few years later, I did get into a AIT program where I met my best friend to this day. And she was in a PhD program. And she says, girl, you should do it. I was like, okay. So we went on this journey together to start this PhD. And then we changed, you know, the majors and the type of doctorate we were going to do. And as I really thought about why did I want this degree so bad that I was spending all this time, effort, and money on, you know, I decided that I really enjoyed teaching. And I decided that that was going to be my retirement plan. I don't see myself ever just fully retiring, sitting around doing nothing all day. I think you got to be like independently wealthy to do that. So I'm just going to chill on the beach in Jamaica somewhere with my laptop, you know, teaching the next doctors and administrators. So that's kind of how I got along this route. And, you know, I wanted to be an example to, you know, my younger cousins and their children and my own children, you know, and really, you know, show them that we can do this. You know, it's many times that I go into a room where I am the only person that looks like me in that room. And we just need more representation.
That's real. That's real right there. I'm telling you right now, you're on the doc chat. We just get warmed up here, folks. We just get warmed up. Dr. Tooks, Dr. Washington, Dr. Montgomery. I'm so happy to have them on. And I'm telling you, these people are tuned in. If you're tuned in, shout us out in the comments. I got to show love to Shar Allen. This might be up your alley, Dr. Montgomery. It might be up your alley here. These folks want to go that route. And I'm telling you, these people are inspired by us. Black doctors doing great things. Now, we just going to start to go ahead and jump into some of this fun of the finish line. What that is. Got to go with Dr. Montgomery. What were the steps for you to finish? Did you do qualifying exams? Did you do dissertation? What got you to that finish line in your particular program specifically?
Yes. So we had 2 qualifying exams and a dissertation. We had 2 years of full-time classwork. And after the first year, you would sit for your written qualifying exam. And so going into the program, I was really afraid of what this 20 to 30 page paper was supposed to be about. But what they actually do is walk you through the process as you're going through your first year. So at UCLA, we had quarters. So each quarter, fall, winter, and spring, you take classes that you sort of write a piece of this qualifying exam. Mm-hmm. And as you are getting feedback from your professors and editing your papers and things, at the end of the year, you end up with what should be a 20 to 30 page paper. And so they send you out the instructions. You have about 2 weeks to get it done and you turn it in. My written qualifying exam was a mess because I was a mess. I had at the time been dating my high school sweetheart. We had done 13 years off and on. He had just taken me ring shopping, all the things. I had just turned 30. And out of the blue, literally out of the blue, about 2 weeks before the qualifying exam was due, he said, no, actually about a week before it was due, you know what? You deserve somebody better than me. Oh. You deserve to be in a relationship with somebody who is more your speed. And I was like, oh, you're kidding, right? I wrote that qualifying exam the night before it was due in tears, like through tears. I would cry and I would type and I would cry and I would type. And I was a mess, but it got done. Went on to the second year. After the second year, you can do your oral qualifying exam. Most people don't do it until the third year because you need to put together a proposal. And at UCLA, your proposal consisted of the first 3 chapters of your dissertation.
Sure.
And so, no, I'm sorry, the first 4 chapters of your dissertation. And so you needed to have those chapters written, edited, approved by your committee, and all together in a nice little bow. And then you could defend it to your committee. And so I sort of pussyfooted around a little bit and didn't get that done until my 4th year. And in the fall of my 4th year, got that done. And now you can get started on your dissertation work. So finished the oral qualifying exam, submitted for IRB approval.
Mhm.
And once that comes back, now you can get started on your actual study. For me, I wanted to do too much. So my dissertation was actually 2 dissertations in one. I did 2 different studies. And so that meant 2 everything, 2 IRBs, 2 just, I was doing too much. But I got it done in a year and a half. So I did graduate in 5 years. Before graduation, about a month before, I defended my dissertation. And so that was me taking all 7. I had a 7-chapter dissertation, taking all 7 chapters, getting them approved, and then in a public forum, answering questions about the dissertation and sort of defending my work. And that was it for me. It took 5 years. A lot of times they hope that you can do it in 4 years. I don't know a lot of people these days that are getting through in 4 years unless they're doing, there are a couple of nursing PhD programs that are like fast tracked, and they will cover the cost of the program. You're not allowed to work, and you finish it in 3 years. But those are very rare, and I don't know a lot of people who are doing that.
Yeah. And these are the real conversations that need to be happening right now, because I'm telling you, the people are chiming in. Shout out to my friend, Dr. Randolph. She's loving the Black Girl Magic that's on here right now. And I'm telling you, they're loving these stories. They're loving them. They're inspiring people as we go. Dr. Tooks, the finish line. What did it look like for you? What did it take? How did you get there?
Let's see. It's so funny because it was like a blur, to be quite honest with you. It was a blur because I was all over the place. So for my program, it was 3 years of coursework. And then after that, towards the end of that coursework period, I had to do an internship where I had to demonstrate competency in 5 different areas. So teaching, research, clinical supervision, I think it was like community service, and it was one other area. So I was teaching courses and doing research and doing all these other things for my internship. Had to get a certain number of hours. So I'm worried, trying to get these hours in, things like that. We had a 2 days of comprehensive exams. So they were about 4 hours each day, and they were written exams. So basically I think I had to answer, I think it was like 5 to 7 questions or something like that, but they were all essay-like questions. And so I remember I had studied, but it was interesting because I didn't quite know how to prepare for these exams. Right. So this is one of the reasons why I love the work that I do as an academic advisor, because I help students with their board licensing, physicians with their board licensing exams all the time, and trying to help them develop a study plan and strategy. I didn't have that. So when it was time for me to study for these comps, I didn't really know how to study. I did as best I could, but I remember studying up to the minute, like getting up at 3 a.m., taking those intermittent breaks, getting up at 1 a.m. I'm going to take a 30-minute nap, get back up, study for 2 more hours. And I'm writing all of these things out in one of those, a notebook, writing all of the answers out. You didn't quite know exactly what questions would be on there, but we did get the older questions from the previous year. So I'm writing everything out, and I'm trying to memorize it and retain it and internalize it. And I was up to the minute studying for those exams, and I would go in, sit there for 4 hours, leave. I went back the next day, did the same thing. If you did not answer a question, it's not necessarily that it was correct, but if it didn't really give enough substance to address the nature of the question, you would have to do it over. So the hope is that you just answered all the questions and you would not have to do it over. One thing that I do appreciate about the way that my comps were set up is that they were set up for you to succeed. So it's not like if you missed a question, you would have to do comps all over or you just didn't pass. The faculty set up comps so that students could succeed. So if you did miss a question, you would receive feedback from the faculty. You would take the feedback, redo the question, and then submit it again. So I did miss one question. I redid it. I passed my comps. I remember I was really happy about that. And then I had to move on into the proposal phase, which, like Dr. Montgomery had said, I had to have my first 3 chapters finished because after, of course, the comps, I was a candidate now. That was the green light for me to get my dissertation going. And once it finally got going, it was a very slow start because, again, I did not really understand the dissertation process or what that meant. And that was not really something that was explained too much to me. This is why I'm glad we have this platform. But once I got a very slow start to my dissertation writing process, but eventually it got going and I got my 3 chapters done. I proposed it. It was approved. And then I got the green light to conduct research. The research was another challenging process because I was conducting surveys. So I was doing a quantitative research study, and my dissertation was about the strong Black woman schema and its impact on Black women who were pursuing a higher education post-secondary degree. And this was from my experience of being in the program. So I took my experience, turned it into a research question, and that's what I conducted my research on. My research took about 2 years to do. Because there were some ups and downs with it. Research is unpredictable. You don't know where it's going to go. But I did eventually finish it, and I was cranking it out, like making sure that as soon as my dissertation chair gave me feedback, I hit him right back with it, like in the same day. Because I'm like, I'm trying to get done. I'm seeing my classmates, which I came from a class of 4 people, and then one of them left the program to pursue other interests. So it was just 3. So I'm watching my classmates pass, they're done. And I'm like, wait a minute now, like, wait a minute, I got to get out of here. So I was really burning it, trying to get it done. And eventually I did get it done in 2 years. And I was able to graduate in the winter time. So that was a very exciting time. But when I defended my dissertation, I sat alone by myself for about 2.5 to 3 hours because I just couldn't believe. I wasn't ready for the congrats and all of that. I just had to take it in for a second because people just didn't understand what it took to actually get to the defense. It was like literally a lot of tears, a lot of, I don't know if I can do this. I almost quit the program at the very end because I didn't think I was going to be able to finish. And also, it also felt like my dissertation chair was not on my side. I respect my dissertation chair a lot, but it seemed as though his modality for working with dissertation students I didn't gel with it very well. So it made the dissertation process very difficult. But despite that, I did finish. It took 5 years, and thank God is what I have to say.
That's epic.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that mounted book. I'm telling you, when they send that thing to you.
I keep it close.
It's epic right there. That's epic. So we're going to go to the great and wonderful Dr. Washington, and we just have to know, and I just got to put this up real quick because we're going to share all of these, but I'm telling you, how did we get here? How did we get to this day, this moment? What did it take for you to get here?
Blood, sweat, and tears, and a couple $100,000. So I have an interesting perspective on all of this because I've experienced some of what both of my peers just mentioned. And so I literally am still all but dissertation at another school for a DBA. And I mean, I threw in the towel because I did feel like my chair wasn't really doing me service because my dissertation had to do with nursing home administrators and why they leave and how that affects the quality that nursing home residents receive. And because there was no one that did what I did or knew what I did, they would try to tell me how I should write something. I'm like, yeah, but that's not how it works. Like, I do this every day. Like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
So
And some of them don't even have doctorates done too.
right.
That's what be funny.
So it was very, very frustrating. And then at one point, I literally felt like I got to a point to where, you know, there was no more student loans to be had. So I'm paying like 25 grand out of pocket every year and like literally getting nowhere. And so, you know, I had to make the decision of, okay, am I going to keep doing this or not? And so I decided to stop for a while. And I thought about it, and I really wanted to finish this. I felt like I owed it, you know, to my mom, who actually passed away before I finished. And I just felt I owed it to her. I owed it to my children. You know, they literally have, you know, been there and been, you know, my cheerleaders, you know, throughout this whole process. And so I pivoted, and I went a different route, got the DHA, and my program, the end was more of a practicum. You know, the entire last semester, we worked in like groups. So it was like a group of 4 to 5 people, which I hate. It's the part that I hated the most about my MBA, because if something's due, I know it's due, I'm going to do my part. You know, but there's always that one person on the group that just ain't gonna pull their weight. And then the other people's in the group, you know, you end up doing their work and kind of like dragging them along with you. But I will tell you that, you know, we put out such a good product at the end. We ended up doing like our teaching practicum. We literally created an entire like online course. Wow. Like from the marketing to setting up the whole website, the platform. I mean, just everything, the syllabus, all of the quizzes and projects and things. It was awesome. It was a really good, I thought it was a real school by the time we were finished. So, you know, that's kind of how we finished the program. But the one thing that I do want to say to our listeners is that if you are in a program, and, you know, my heart just really goes out to Dr. Montgomery, because I feel you on what you went through when you got to the end of your program. And when we start these journeys, you have to understand that everyone is not going to get to the end with you. They're just not, for a number of reasons. Either they start to feel inferior. They were never there for you in the first place. or, you know, they may become jealous. You know, there's a lot of dynamics, you know, that come along in relationships, you know, that come out when you start to do something as great as completing a doctoral degree. You know, there's not a whole lot of us for a reason. It's hard work. It requires commitment. It requires dedication, and sacrifice. And sometimes people that are with you are not really with you.
That's right.
So you just have to understand and be aware that when you start this journey, you may have to finish it alone, or you may have to finish it without the support of some of the people that are closest to you. So, but don't give up. If it's something that you want to do, push forward and make it happen. Because if people are for you and they love you, they are going to support you and help you through that journey. So don't sell yourself short because others can't see your vision.
That's it. That's beautiful. And Dr. Washington getting recruited out here, you know what I'm saying? She dropping that knowledge. You never know. The doc chat may lead you to new horizons.
Are you kidding me? My boss told me I better never leave her again. I'm not going nowhere.
I'm telling you, this is the doc chat. I appreciate y'all for checking in. We got Dr. Washington, Dr. Tooks, and Dr. Montgomery. And we're getting to the fun part of the doc chat now. Now, this amazing doctor right here, we got to show her some love because she did that thing. She did that thing. Tell us how you got here. And you was the flag bearer for your school.
I was.
That's incredible. Tell us, how was this day, that graduation day? How was that day?
It was a lot. It was so overwhelming. And to be honest, I cried, like boo-hoo crying. And some of my classmates were consoling me during the graduation ceremony when our dean stand up and said, by the power vested in me, you are now doctors, in the state of California, UCLA. We didn't have tassels to turn, but, she had us stand up and conferred that degree. And my knees began to buckle and almost fell to the ground. I mean, I cried because I had gone through so much to finish that degree. When I started, I was in a really great place financially. I was blessed to receive a full ride. So I had a fellowship. I didn't have to pay to go to school, but I did have to quit my full-time job and I went per diem. I moved on campus because I wanted the full experience of being a doctoral student, and I wanted to be close. Like if my professors needed to meet me in 10 minutes, I wanted to be able to get there. Mm-hmm. And so I had a home that my mother lived in, but while I was in school that first year, I was still paying a large portion of the mortgage. Like I almost lost my house. There were things that people just did not know that I was dealing with. While I was in school, my father was diagnosed with dementia. I was his caregiver. And so I'm in school, but I'm going to his house on the weekends, taking his meds and making sure he's taking them correctly, taking him to doctor's appointments, making sure he's okay. And as I see him deteriorate, I'm fighting with his doctors, trying to get them to diagnose him with dementia so that he can get the help he needs. They finally do so in my 4th year. I had to make the really hard decision to put him into a long-term care facility. And I just remember taking him there with my mom, and he was like, this is a really nice place. This is great. I'd love to come back and visit here. When are we going home? And I said, Daddy, this is your home. And I mean, Dad tore me up. And when going to visit him, he would say, I want to go home. Can you just take me home? And, so I'm dealing with that kind of thing, dealing with relationship stuff. And toward the end of it all, it felt very overwhelming. I remember a point at which I had scheduled my dissertation defense in February. We scheduled it for April. I was going to be the first person that year to defend. And a week before we were supposed to go, one of my dissertation committee members said, I don't want to do this on this date anymore, because another one of my committee members was out of the country. She was doing research in China, but we had, worked with the technology. We made sure everything was going to be fine. She was going to be able to Zoom in. And one of my dissertation committee members said, I'm not doing this because if the technology doesn't work, I'm not rescheduling. So if something happens and she doesn't show up, I don't know what you're going to do. I had people flying into that dissertation defense. There were people, I'm the first person in my family to get a doctorate. I had people taking off of work and coming to see me defend my dissertation. And that woman told me I couldn't do that. And I wanted to wrap my hands around her neck, squeeze the life out of her. And I remember there was another dissertation committee member. She would say, Tiffany, what would Michelle Obama do? What would Michelle Obama do? And she had to really calm me down. I mean, you go through it in these programs and people they don't understand. There were baby showers I missed. There was family reunions I missed. I went to my friend's bridal shower and sat on her couch the entire time with my laptop open because I had a presentation to work on. I never once moved off that spot. I didn't eat. I didn't realize anything was going on around me. I've gone to a cousin's wedding and stayed in the hotel while they were out doing the bachelorette party because I had a paper to write. Like there were things that we just sacrificed. And I mean, I'm not saying this to tell people don't do it. It was a wonderful experience. I'm so glad that I have a PhD, but it is hard work. And when you get to the end of that finish line, there is a release. And this is the other thing. Nobody told me about this. There comes a point for a lot of us that you almost get depressed. Like it's a very anticlimactic experience. You go through all of this, to get to this point. You reach the day of graduation. You graduated. Now what? Yeah. I remember I was so depressed when my diploma came in the mail. I was already at Penn by this time, living in Philly. My diploma came in the mail and I wanted to rip it to shreds. I put it away. A friend of mine said, just put it away where you can't see it. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. You'll feel differently, in a few months. but just put it away. I mean, it was hard, and nobody tells you to expect that. And I just wish we would talk about it more.
That's it. That's real stuff. Real stuff. I'm telling you, people are coming with it. Y'all touching hearts right now. This is real stuff that people need to know. The glory is great, but the story is even greater. I'm telling you right now. So we have the wonderful Dr. Tooks and a video she's sharing that went a little viral. Hopefully it plays good. Let's check it out.
So I'm sitting here and I got like a mountain.
Oh, hold on, give me a second.
So I'm sitting here and I got like a mountain.
Try one more time.
So I'm sitting here and I got like a mountain.
Skip a little bit.
Visions that I need to make, but I can't even focus.
Moving quick. Hold on. Sorry about that. We want to make sure we get this. So give me one
here, and I got like a mountain that I need to make, but I can't even focus on making them because I don't know how. It's like my brain hurts. My brain hurts. And I said I wasn't going to cry. I said I wasn't going to. But this is what it looks like being in this position. I'm a Black woman going to a predominantly white school. I'm trying to talk to these white teachers about this subject, this cultural subject about my people that is just not being understood. So it seems like at every corner I have to defend what I'm saying like it's not true. And it's hard. It's been hard. I sit in front of this computer every day for hours. And then till my brain just oozes out of my ear. It's just all I'm trying to do is graduate.
Oof, I remember those days.
What you say?
And I had to make sure I played it. Sorry for technical difficulties. But she got there. She got there. By the grace of God, she got there. Now tell me about what getting there is, Dr. Tooks. What is getting there?
Watching that, almost I could feel it. Like, I made it a purpose to kind of vlog my doctoral experience because it was my only outlet to counteract the stress and the frustration and the anxiety. Because it wasn't until I was in my PhD program that I started developing very intense anxiety. And it wasn't until the dissertation phase where it really started to manifest. It's like the dissertation phase almost pushed me over the edge. And so I remember that day, and it was tough because I was writing my dissertation during the pandemic, right? So I was writing it during that time. All this social injustice is going on. So we have all of these protests, every time I turn on the news, it's another person with my skin color that's being murdered in the streets by police. I'm reading about slavery. So it's kind of like, what was really jaw-dropping to me was that what I was reading about with slavery in the 1600s looked no different in 2020. It was the same. And so it angered me, and it made it hard to write sometimes, because what I'm talking about, I'm doing this historical trajectory, and I'm like, this looks no different than the 1600s. It looks no different than the 70s. It looks no different. And so my dissertation chair failed to understand how what was going on in the world could have been impacting me as a Black female student writing about a racially infused and important subject. So a lot of times, you know, he would tell me like, you know, I don't know why you want to mention the Say Her Name movement. I don't think that this makes sense. I don't think that it connects to the concept. And I forgot, I think it was Dr. Montgomery who said it. I live this. Or it may have been Dr. Washington, I'm sorry, but it's like, how can you tell me it doesn't make sense when I live this every day? This dissertation is based on me. One of the things that was really sad getting to this finish was that I was living out my dissertation. That was not my intent. My intent was not to live it out. The Black woman who is having, you know, the Black woman schema is impacting me just so that my wellness is being deteriorated by the second because I'm trying to be great out here. And it seems like the people who are supposed to help me get there are not helping me get there. To be quite honest, it seemed like my dissertation chair had his foot on my back. I'm like, I'm doing everything. How are you going to tell me that I'm going to be here another year when I'm doing everything? You know, we talk about sacrifice. When I said yes to the program, that's when everything else just started falling apart. I had to quit my full-time job because I didn't have a job. I had to move out of my apartment, move back in with my parents. And thank God I could do that, to live in their basement. You know, I was working part-time at a grocery store because the joke is that you should not work during a PhD. They tell you not to work, not to have kids, not to get married. They say it as a joke, but it's really not a joke because they're like, like your life. So it was like when I videoed moments like that because I knew it was going to be a point where I could look back in victory and say, to God be the glory, you did it, Juanita. You did it. You record these tears, you record the happiness, you record everything because you're going to look back on this and say, thank God I made it. And somebody needs to see this. So that video actually got some critique because some people are like, oh, you know, why are you becoming so emotional? I wouldn't have, some family members even said, I wouldn't have put that out there, you know, criticize. And I'm like, you would have had to live this. You would have had to live this. You can't criticize my experience, my transparency, my emotional expression. As a Black woman, we're socialized to emotionally suppress anyway. So I was more than happy to express emotions that needed to come out of me anyway, because holding them in was, you know, very, very horrible for my mental health. So that day, I remember I was actually a part of the first class to have an in-person graduation because it was right, you know, at the tail end of the pandemic. So I was so proud because the year before, the funny thing is that I added up the numbers. I said, I should have graduated last year, God. I was frustrated with God. Why didn't I graduate? I did everything I was supposed to do. But I'm so glad God doesn't always give us what we want when we want it. Because if I would have graduated when I wanted to, I would not have been able to walk across that stage. I would have had to do a drive-through commencement. And my heart goes out to those who had to endure that. But I worked too hard. I worked too hard. I had to let my mama see. I had to let my dad see. My dad is the son of a sharecropper. He didn't have these opportunities, and neither did my mother. I'm a first generation doctor. I had to do this walk for them. I had to do this walk for my community. I had to do this walk for Black people who think, oh, all I can get is a bachelor's. No, you can go to the top too. You can do it. So that day, I just remember feeling, it was winter too. So the snow was heavy outside. I didn't care. I went through that snow. I got into that auditorium and I could feel just the happy nerves about my name being called and my dissertation title being read. And I can see my mom and my dad. I can hear them cheering for me. It didn't matter about everyone else in the crowd. I could hear my parents. I could hear my mentor. I can hear one of my best friends. And I was like, thank God. It was a surreal experience. So it might be very intense, but it is not impossible. What the women have said on here, and you too, Dr. T, it's sacrifice is the key word. Do not think that you're going to enter a doctorate program and not have to give up something. But I promise you that what you get back in return is going to be 100 times greater than that relationship you had to sacrifice, that job you had to give up. You are going to get it back in better return. Do not worry about what you had to give up because it takes something to be something out here.
Hey, yes.
I need to give an offering to all of them. Offering all of them. Oh my God. I'm telling you, Dr. Randolph got real touch there. And I appreciate Dr. Randolph because we both went through our journeys together. So we were DMing each other like, you all right over there? You okay over there? Because we got to check on one another. We got you. We got you. This is the Doc Chat. I'm telling you, it's been on fire. Black Women's History Month. And I got some amazing Black women doctors that are on here dropping them dimes. Now, we're going to go round robin just real quick. We only got about 5 minutes. Dr. Montgomery, where can people find you and last words, encouragement to anybody working on their doctorate degree.
You can find me on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/Dr. Tiffany Monique. You can find me on Twitter every now and then at Dr. Tiff Monique. I documented my entire journey, all 5 years, on a blog hosted by Sigma Theta Tau International Nursing Honor Society. It is takingholdofmydreams.blogspot.com. You can find 40 blog entries there about what I was going through. And just a word of encouragement, if you want to do this, if this is really the journey you want to go on, go ahead. Don't let anybody stop you, because the only person who can really stop you from reaching the top is yourself.
Powerful, powerful. And Dr. Montgomery also had a good post on LinkedIn, whether to do the PhD or DNP, I believe, was that. Great to look at. Definitely check that out. Dr. Washington, where can we find you?
I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, everywhere. I'm pretty much Samaria Washington. So you can find me there. And I encourage you, if you are interested in doing it, just go ahead and do it. I am very thankful that I get to work in the nation's capital. I will tell you, Washington, D.C., if don't nobody else call you doctor when you get these other doctorates, oh, they gonna call you doctor in D.C. You know, Department of Health, shout out to them. You know, they respect the fact that you've gone to school and you've gotten that doctorate. They respect that. You know, my organization, Bridgepoint Healthcare, they have also been very respectful and very positive and supportive along this journey. So I'm just excited. I'm excited for everybody out there that's thinking about taking this journey. Go ahead. Don't be scared. Do it.
I love it. I love it. And Dr. Tooks, where can we find you? Last words of encouragement.
You can find me on Facebook under Juanita Tooks. You can also find me on Instagram at Dr. Juanita Speaks with an S on the end. And I think that's it. Yes. Oh, and on LinkedIn, under LinkedIn, Juanita Tooks. You search Juanita Tooks, you'll find me on LinkedIn. But my word of encouragement is, and please follow me on Instagram. I'm very active on there. I'm trying to get more active. So yeah, Dr. Juanita Speaks at Instagram. But my word of encouragement is I'm echoing what my peers have said. If you want to go and get a doctorate, you can. Do not let age, don't let color, don't let, haters, family members who told you that nobody ever did in our family, you won't. Don't let comfort zones. Don't let knuckleheaded exes or people that you dealing with who ain't serious about their life. Look, before I got into the PhD program, I had to break off a relationship. And now I understand why, because I wouldn't have been focused. I wouldn't have been focused. Just like what was said, everybody ain't going, the level that God is bringing you to, everybody ain't going to be able to see you when you get to the finish. And that's fine, because this is going to be a filter so that the only people around you are the real ones. The ones who are for you and support you. If you want to do this, don't let money stop you. I got a fellowship and I did a graduate assistantship. My PhD, I don't have to pay a dime for that. There is money there. Don't let things like I don't have enough money. There's money there. If you don't know where it's at, holla at me. We can look for it together, because it's definitely there. But go be great. Don't let anything stop you. It is an intense experience. We are not going to sugarcoat. That's why I'm glad this platform was created by Dr. Turner, so that we can share our experiences. That doesn't mean that our experiences will be your experience. You're going to have your own individual experience that you will be able to share and inspire and help mentor people with. But we don't want to sugarcoat like it's going to be easy. It's not. But think about it. Anything of greatness, was it ever easy?
That's right.
When you think about greatness and easiness don't go hand in hand. Like, you got to give up something. You got to cry sometimes. You got to feel like you're losing your mind. You got to be lonely in order to be great. These are all the things of greatness that people don't talk about, because everybody's so focused on the glitz and the glam of the product. But it's the in between the product and the preview, because we get excited. God told me I was going to be a doctor at 9. Woo! At the end, I was happy I graduated. Woo! It was that process in between that made me a doctor, though. It was the process that made me. So don't be afraid of the process, because when you come out of there, you going to shine like gold, honey. Like, people ain't going to recognize you and all your greatness, all that drip that you're going to have. Go do it.
That's it. That's it. This is the Doc Chat. We out of here. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Until next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.